great. Good afternoon and welcome to this policy dialogue on innovative solutions for a circular economy, organized by the European Policy Center and supported by the Norwegian Mission to the EU, Norwegian Ministry for Climate and Environment, and the Norwegian Embassy in Berlin. My name is Stefan Sipka, and I'm a policy analyst at the European Policy Center, and I will be moderating this discussion today. Circular economy is definitely at the core of ongoing discussions when it comes to modernizing the European economy. Whether we talk about greening the economy or making it more competitive or resilient, circular economy is the topic of the day. I believe that most of the stakeholders, or all of them, agree that we need to achieve a circular economy and move from take, make, dispose model. But the question is how? How to do that in the most efficient way. And arguably, innovation is a strong ally to this transition. If we use the best available techniques and practices, innovative solutions, new technologies, we could make this transition happen. And this is something that we will be discussing today. How can these innovative solutions support circular economy? And of course, how can policies, what are the challenges, and how can policies actually facilitate this transition? Also, just to mention that European Policy Center has been working extensively on one aspect of this topic, which is how to align the digital transformation and green transition. And I would be happy to also reflect on some of our findings and insights during this policy dialogue. But first things first, I would like to invite everyone that we watch a short video prepared by the Norwegian government, where we will hear first the key remarks from the Norwegian Minister of Climate and Environment, Mr. Sveinung Rotevat, and also see some examples from Norway on how innovative solutions can support circular economy. And after that, we will go back to the live session. So let's watch the video first.
Dear speakers, participants, panelists, dear all, I wish to welcome all of you to this webinar called Innovative Solutions for a Circular Economy. The mission of Norway to the EU is hosting this webinar in cooperation with the European Policy Center, Innovation Norway, and the Norwegian Embassy in Berlin. I would like to thank all of you for taking the initiative to make this happen. We really welcome the frequent message from the EU Commission highlighting the green and digital transformation as a crucial part of the European Green Deal. We noticed that Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, in her State of the Union speech, referred to the industry strategy from March this year. A key message was to ensure that European industry could lead the twin green and digital transition. Norway very much supports these priorities and echoes them in appropriate settings. We think enabling innovation for new technology and the digital solutions are crucial parts of achieving a circular and climate neutral economy by 2050. We have huge challenges ahead of us. Reaching the ambitious but necessary targets set up in the European Green Deal will not be easy. And I will underline that the challenges we face are a result of yesterday's thinking. Reaching the important goals we have set for 2050, which are crucial for a sustainable and sound future, will require us to leave the thinking of the past behind. We need to future-proof our mindset. Perhaps that will be the most difficult part of our common task. We are impressed by the high ambitions, the cross-cutting approach, and the comprehensive work laid down in the new Circular Economy Action Plan. This is a good basis for further work. Norway experiences that we share the main views concerning circular economy with the European Commission. Reaching the intentions laid down in the action plan and achieving a circular economy will, for example, require robust and well-functioning markets for secondary raw materials. We think that advanced and digital technologies are a prerequisite to realize well-functioning markets for secondary raw materials. We foresee that further digitalization, artificial intelligence, and technological development will be key factors in increasing our circularity. It is important that we don't make regulations and incentives based on what appear to be the best available technologies today. We have to make regulations that brings the world forward and support innovation and the development of future technologies. We must support new solutions without deciding today on what will be tomorrow's technological winners. In addition, we think it is of utmost importance that the twin green and digital transition becomes the basis in all European regulations where revisions are foreseen in the near future. Regulations should foster and stimulate new digital and technological solutions, while at the same time respecting the specificities of member states. On the webinar today, we will shed some light on policies, technologies, and regulations enabling a green and digital transition. We will first give you a taste of some Norwegian examples of the green and digital transition. We will present to you the Explorer, the Norwegian showcase for green solutions. We like to think of the Explorer as the Tinder for businesses, searching for green solutions and matches. Later, we will introduce a Norwegian company delivering advanced sorting systems for waste, which have resulted in increased amounts of plastic packaging and metals sent to recycling. Then there will be a debate, and we're very happy to have the European Commission, the German presidency, and Tomra, representing the industry, taking part in the discussion. The topic will be how policies, technologies, and regulations can promote innovative solutions for a circular and climate-neutral economy. After the debate, we will hear remarks from the European Parliament, and there will be an opportunity to exchange views and ask questions to the participants. Enjoy the webinar. I hope you have fruitful discussions concerning innovation for advanced technologies and digital solutions. We need to get to a giant leap forwards to the aim of a circular economy. Hopefully today will be one small step on the way. Good luck everyone, and again, welcome.
I believe that there was
social and environmental challenges also mean opportunities. Norway is pioneering green technology, connecting sustainable solutions with companies across the world at the touch of a button. Introducing the Explorer, a digital platform for Norwegian technology. Find relevant solutions for your needs across a spectrum of industries, from green shipping to clean energy and smart cities. Explore carefully selected solutions from vetted companies. Register and contact the company directly to start an immediate dialogue with the right person. To make business sustainable, we have to work together across borders, sectors, and industries. The world needs solutions that work now. It's time to choose greener, better, and smarter, setting a new business standard for a healthier planet. The Explorer, green technology, north of the ordinary.
The inhabitants' household and food waste are collected by ROAF on a regular basis. The waste trucks arrive, and the waste is fed onto the conveyor. The conveyor delivers the waste into the sorting plant. In the sorting plant, the green bags of food waste are being sorted out first. Sensor technology from the Norwegian company Tomra Sorting, Titech, makes spectrometric readings by using near-infrared, NIR, light, which reads the type of material and its quality. The waste bags pass through a bag opener. Then, drum screens and the vibration screen will separate the waste according to sizes. NIR technology sorts waste with the right size into 5 types of plastic, mixed paper, and residual waste. Highly skilled employees are monitoring the machines constantly. The plant is fully automatic and one of the most modern waste sorting plants in Europe. Magnetic metal is being sorted out by overband magnets, and an eddy current machine is sorting out non-magnetic metal. A ballistic separator separates the foil from other rolling plastic material. NIR technology separates the plastic into PET, PP, PE, and mixed plastic. The sorting plant will automatically sort out about 2,500 tons of plastic every year for material recycling. It's the same as 5,000 tons of crude oil. The cages contain 7 different sorts of waste. The cages are emptied automatically when they're full. The material is then pressed into cubes for recycling, each containing about 1 meter squared. PET, PE, PP, foil, mixed plastic, mixed paper, non-magnetic metal. The remaining waste is sent to incineration. The energy will be used for heating and electricity. The green bags of food waste will be brought to a biogas plant after sorting, where it will be transformed to biogas and biofertilizer, giving both environmentally friendly fuel and fertilizer for food production. Our waste trucks are now using your banana peel, your coffee grounds, and your apple cores for fuel. The circle of recycling is complete.
So, yes, I hope you liked the video. I found it insightful, and also both the key introductory remarks by Minister Rotevat, and thank the Minister for this, and but also very interesting cases of the online platform, the Explorer, but also very concrete case when it comes to central waste sorting. And indeed also something that we will be discussing further on, but just to add that as part of EPC's previous research, indeed, we identified a number of ongoing already existing examples, technologies, cases that can support circular economy in different stages of the life cycle. So including end of life phase, but also to highlight that there are possibilities to address the design phase, preparation for use, use phase. And so indeed, there are many opportunities with digitalization as well as other innovative solutions in this regard. Happy to discuss further on this. And now I would like to open the panel discussion and to invite the panel speakers to turn their cameras on. So I'm happy to have a number of very interesting speakers and experts together with us to discuss innovative solutions, circular economy and policies to support these processes. Just one technical remark before we start when it comes to the participants and Q&A. Indeed, after the panel discussion, we will be having questions and answers with the participants and the panel speakers. But in order to, because we don't have a lot of time, right? It is good that we try to pick as many questions as possible to address them. That is why I would encourage the participants to write their questions in the Q&A section that is provided below by the Zoom platform. And I will pick on these questions and direct them towards the panel speakers. And I also would encourage the participants to send their questions early on. You can already do that during the panel discussion, because if we receive questions at the very last moment, there is a strong probability that we may not be able to answer all of these questions. So just a general housekeeping rule on this. And moving forward, I would like to first invite to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Sirpa Pietikäinen, member of the European Parliament, who has managed to join us despite a very busy Strasbourg week. So thank you so much for joining the discussion, and indeed happy to hear your reflections from your point of view, and also what the Parliament is currently working on when it comes to innovative solutions for circular economy and policies that can support this process. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and special thank you for organizing this very interesting and important discussion about how to combine the innovation and circular economy. And I do apologize that you do not have the video connection, and there might be some problems with the voice quality, because I just needed to drive to have my plenary intervention about the topic that I'm responsible of the Parliament's resolution. But anyway, let's try to manage with what we have. First of all, there are some of the basic claims that I would like to lay on the table before starting the debate itself. And the first one is that this is a huge paradigm change. And that means that we have to have the answer on the same scale as the challenge. And the challenge as a scale is that within 30 years, that is not that long of the time, we would need to create the same well-being, the same income, and the same benefit for end consumers with 1/10 of the resources that we are currently using, because we are using 1.5 planets already, and the amount is increasing, it's exponential. That means that we shouldn't make this kind of a linear, small step solutions, because that then we risk of making sunk investments on sidetracks, the second best solutions. And then we run out of the time and the money to make the real innovative solution on the scale of the challenge. Okay, and what that then means, it means we need to design out of the waste from the product. So it all starts with the product design. We need to design the products as services more and more often. And we need to choose the materials that we are using in the products, so that the products are in the future living much longer. They are upgradable, repairable, they are modular, and the parts can be reused, and the materials can be then used without losing the value of the material. So a lot of this kind of an set what we are having and seeing momentarily in our waste collection, sorting, and especially in plastics, is outdated, and it will not last the test of the times, because if you create first a problem, you just can't solve it on the end phase. So it starts with the product design. Then the second point is the lease economy or service economy. How we can use more and more often the goods and services, the goods as services. be it business to business like pallets, machinery, or be it to business to consumer services like electronics, that is the major challenge, textiles, that is a growing challenge for circular economy, housing that matter, and buildings, or cars, or mobility, or how you can create a mobility as as a service. And there in the crux we have the digitalization and artificial intelligence. And if we could have much better information about the tracks of the materials, of the products, so the product path is very essential. We could create a new certainty for those ones who want to create, let's say, the mobile phones as a service instead of selling them, or the pallets as a service. And having the current change our legislation in EU level to create that certainty for producers to act. We need to develop the on-demand economy, and I just pick up the mobility as a service and the artificial intelligence there, so we can forecast and see how many people are willing to go and from where to where, and instead of passively introducing the services as they are at the moment, we would design the structure of trains or buses or cars or joint cars or taxis or whatever that would be according the demand. For that matter, the production of the textiles, because the fashion is having shorter and shorter time span, as we know, and we are producing more and more textile waste. The question is, could we have more and more on demand, the fashion on demand and textiles, be it the textiles used in institutions and business to business, or the business to consumers. But that matter, the digitalization itself is going to be a big challenge for circular economy, and especially on energy efficiency and climate change. So we need to fix on the algorithms the way to create a energy saving, circular, and innovative algorithms within the artificial intelligence. And we need to solve the fact that with new innovation, especially in digitalization, we have nowadays quite often unintended obsolescence of products, programs, and services. So we would need to design the ICT and the goods so that they last the test of new innovations and artificial intelligence itself. So I've been proposing in the circular economy report in the Parliament that the Commission should come out with this kind of a sustainable digitalization, ICT, and artificial intelligence roadmap in the future. And what we would need to do is to set quite a lot of money aside, and this kind of a public and private joint partnerships to create these innovative partnerships and new business ecosystems that are needed when we really think that the materials and the goods are in closed loops, be it then the material circulation in quick side like in food packing or foods, or the long, slow side like it is in construction and buildings. And we need to create the urban planning so that the new ecosystem will function concretely, because that doesn't make a lot of sense to use a very long distances on sending the materials or goods back and forth. Well, these were just a couple of challenges, and I would be happy to continue, but because I don't see the time myself, I'm just sort of approximately thinking that I used my 10 minutes that was reserved on me, and I'm happy to continue the discussions then later on in the panel, and let's reserve the time for discussion and Q&As as said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sirpa. Indeed, very interesting thoughts and also news on what is currently going on. Also, when it comes to the work of your work and although in the Parliament on this topic. And just to pick on some of the things you mentioned, indeed, it's important to address the entire life cycle of a product, starting from eco design, and then, but of course, trying to improve the end of life phase itself. But just looking at the entire life cycle is indeed very important. And just to mention, artificial intelligence really has a great role to play in this, as also our research shows it can be used to speed up the development of more new different materials, alloys that can also be more circular, but also servitization, as you mentioned, and also to repeat also what probably a lot of you have heard already, this expression that we don't need cars, we need mobility, we don't need lamps, we need light. And it's really, there are huge opportunities with product as a service business models. And again, also in Finland, there are interesting examples in this. For example, WIM as an app that is used to actually purchase a service, mobility service, and to support multimodal mobility. So there are already ongoing cases, and they can further be supported by policies. Lastly, greening ICT is indeed is a necessity, given that currently emissions of ICT from the ICT sector are comparable to aviation sector, but they can even go higher up. So that's something that has to be addressed too. But yes, these are all interesting topics, food for thought, and something to discuss further. And I would like to then move on and also introduce our next speaker for today, Mr. William Neale, advisor for circular economy and Directorate for Circular Economy and Green Growth in DG Environment, European Commission. William, happy to have you here with us. And we heard now what's going on in the European Parliament, but also Commission has been very active in when it comes to innovation, circular economy, and green transition and digital transition. And happy to hear your thoughts on this. What are the prospects of for when it comes to innovative solutions, circular economy, and what policies can do, what EU policies can do to support this process?
Well, thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you, Sirpa, and I hope that you're having a safe trip. I realize my backdrop looks very professional here, but it's only to mask my daughter's bedroom, which looks a bit more chaotic. What are you saying about moving from, well, the fact that we want mobility, not necessarily cars, reminds me of a very interesting parallel. In the 19th century, a lot of bigger cities were faced with a big problem, which was manure, horse shit, because horses were providing power for most of the forms of transport. And a big technological advance, the internal combustion engine, provided the answer to that, but it also had other consequences. Not only were horses made unemployed, but today our cities are faced with piles of metal and rubber sitting at the side of the road, hundreds and thousands of millions of cars, and they're clogging up our cities and the air that we breathe. And maybe we'll have another technological fix with driverless cars, but we'll see. But the point of the story is that technological fixes have a habit of solving one problem, but also disrupting the incumbents and creating other challenges, whole new sets of challenges. So I've learnt in my years in Brussels to be very wary of people coming to me with miracle technologies and saying, you know, we have the solution to all of your problems. And I wonder whether this will be the same with digital technologies. Now, the agricultural revolution had land as its main raw material, and the industrial revolution had materials, iron and other materials as its main sort of raw material. And we say that the information revolution will have data as its raw material. Now, when we talk about circular economy, we usually talking about materials. We developed the economic approach looking at sort of the great acceleration at global level, the global consumption and pressures on those raw materials, and the fact that Europe has a particular interest because we're poor in those raw materials. Now, circular economy, as I hope everybody here knows, is about retaining the value of those raw materials as they move through the economy. I'll see if I can. There we go. So I'm sure many of you already know this slide already, which isn't working. Yes, there we go. What we're trying to do is make those materials move through the economy slower. Those materials might be in the form of products or buildings or other assets. And when they become waste, we need to harvest the components, we need to recycle materials, and that's that line going along the bottom. The idea is to make this sort of river, this flow of materials, more like a lake than a river, to keep the materials in the system so that we can make use of them for as long as possible. But if our information economies are to use data as their raw material, how does that change things? Does it mean that we'll need less of these physical materials? For a start, data isn't scarce. It's not scarce enough, in my opinion, sometimes, and we're looking at a 5-fold expansion in the next 10 years, probably, of the amount of data around. It can be infinitely copied, but it does have an impact. That can be in the mining of the critical raw materials we need for our consumer electronic devices, the energy to run our data centers, and so on. But technology isn't neutral. It can be used for good or for bad. I think I'll stop sharing my screen there. And it's how we manage the interaction between the physical world and the digital world, which will determine the sustainability. So it could be used to drive linear consumption and production more rapidly. Just as easily it can be used to enable sustainable and circular models. So we need to steer it, and that's what's on our table today. We just heard the Norwegian minister talk about the clear statement of President van der Leyen about the twin green and digital transitions. Now, as with most twins, as with most siblings, they don't just act independently. They have to get along with each other. So we're now very much working on the articulation between the digital and the green to ensure that we have sustainable approaches. Now, we're looking at 3 perspectives, basically. The first is using digital technologies to enable better policies. So here we're talking about better knowledge to inform the design of our policies, better monitoring and reporting through satellite or in situ or citizen science monitoring, better coordination and implementation and compliance between ministries through interoperable and real-time possibilities. The second perspective we're looking at is the impact of the ICT sector itself. And here I think as you probably know, the Circular Economy Action Plan has identified ICTs as one of its key value chains. We're looking at the impact of consumer electronic devices and of data centers, for example. But thirdly, and I think this is the most important and the biggest potential, is how we can use digital technologies to enable circularity. And it's our ability to attach data to physical resources that opens up possibilities to allocate them and to use them better, and in turn to make them more valuable. So we know that as a product moves through its lifespan, our interest is in really avoiding it becoming waste. Once it becomes waste, it's really lost most of its value. Okay, we can recycle it and try and get some of that residual value back, but we need to look at other means of working at the product level to keep the product in functionality, in use. So what are we doing with the Circular Economy Action Plan to make that sort of value retention a reality, and how can data help? So I'm sure you know that and I won't start going into too much detail on the Circular Economy Action Plan today. I'm sure many of you have heard about it before, and if not, you can have the pleasure of reading it. But the groundbreaking part of it was really this focus on products. So we're proposing to use the tools of the single market and of consumer policy to push that transition. And then late next year, we should come up with a sustainable product policy initiative, a sustainable product initiative, probably based on expanding the scope and the application of the Eco-Design Directive to try and make sustainability the norm for products in Europe. And then 10 days ago, you may have seen that we adopted a communication on consumer policy, which sets out our plans for how to better inform consumers, how to protect them against false green claims, provide them with a right to repair, and so on. Now, if you think about a product as it makes its journey through the economy, we're talking about 4 trillion products per year on the global markets in 100 million different forms, and each product is using different materials, different components, different ingredients. It's sourced, produced, retailed, it changes hands, it's then becomes waste, maybe it's reused and then it becomes waste. We need to be able to track the journeys of those products and materials as they go through the economy if we're going to optimize their functionality and their value. And without data attached to those products, we're really flying blind. We need to have that data. And today we lose nearly all of it. So this is what is behind the idea of the product passport, the digital product passport. The idea is that it will carry the most important and relevant information along the value chain. Now, this, of course, will bring important business-to-business opportunities. It can also bring important consumer benefits, and it can also help on the B2G, the business-to-government level. I think we're not dreaming in our idea of a product passport. The technology is already there, and in fact, it's already happening. We see examples in tracking and tracing for luxury goods to avoid counterfeiting, tracking fashion for due diligence on conditions in textile factories, for enabling products as a service, and so on. And we also see quite a few important pilots happening. So we have the Global Batteries Alliance Consortium, which brings together car producers, recyclers, and so on. And they're working on electric vehicle batteries. We have Tomra, who we'll hear from later, working with Procter & Gamble and other brands on how we can fingerprint packaging so that we can sort it more effectively, and so on. So the business logic is already there, whether we're talking about high value consumer goods or whether we're talking about short-lived, low-value packaging and goods. So, and I think the reason we're seeing this happening already is that companies understand that losing this data means losing value. And I find that when I'm trying to explain the digital product passport, we get the usual reactions from MEPs, from member states, and so on, concerned about the administrative costs and burdens of demanding more information from companies. But from what I hear, for example, of the Global Batteries Alliance, they're saying that they expect negative costs. And I think that this will be the case in most instances. So why should the Commission get involved in this if the private sector will do it anyway? I think first because the full benefits for business will only be reached if we ensure that data is open and accessible, and that it's readable and it's interoperable. And that means that as a public authority managing a major market, we need to use our convening power and our legislative power to get all of the interested stakeholders to agree on what data is needed, by who and when, and to agree on when that data should be protected for privacy or commercial reasons. Second reason is because I think that we need to be able to add to the business-to-business benefits, those business to consumer and business to government possibilities to give consumers more information, to exercise their right to repair, to get the public benefits, and so on. So what would a digital product passport look like at European level? I can't tell you. It's still very much under discussion at the concept stage. But I think there are a couple of things that are emerging clearly. First is that you don't really need a lot of centralized data. What you need is that every product has an individual identifier, a sort of birth certificate, and that would have very basic and minimal information, and that could be kept on a sort of centralized database, perhaps the European data space for smart circular applications, which we announced in our data strategy last February. And from this, you can create links. You can create a kind of URL, which for each product would then link you to via a tag on the product, which could be a digital fingerprint, an RFID tag, whatever, barcode, or really technology doesn't matter. That would link you to information that is already available from companies or governments. What is important is that we agree on how to make that data accessible to the right people at the right time. I think most of the useful data already exists. We're not talking about creating great amounts of new data. Either it exists already or it will be created by the product itself as it moves through the system, talking about transactions that might be recorded or dynamic data. And I think that we also have the possibility through distributed ledger technologies to secure and encrypt data that might be sensitive. So to conclude, and I'm aware that I'm maybe going over the time a little bit. The idea of a digital product passport has really garnered the support of private sector, as I say, but also I think member states in council and the parliament, and we'll see the council conclusions on sustainability for or digital for sustainability and on the circular economy at the end of December, and from the parliament in January. And I don't think that there's a lot of opposition to the idea. I don't think that the technology is a problem, but I think there are two main challenges. I would say that the first one is managing the governance system so that we can get all of the stakeholders to agree on how to treat the data, and to do this in a dynamic way, which takes into account the continual development of products and of markets. And the second is to get the balance right between privacy and protection on the one side and openness and access on the other. And just in that last respect, and I'll finish with this because it's a big day in that respect. In case you haven't noticed already, but today the Commission has adopted its Promised Data Governance Act, a regulation, and I will share an up-to-date. Let me see. Oops. Quotation from our Executive Vice President, Vestager. As I said, it is data use and access to data is critical, and we want to have a European model for that, which isn't based on surveillance or on freedom, which means that the people that control the data have all the power. So the new regulation will include measures to increase trust in data sharing, as that is currently a big obstacle and results in high costs. It will introduce or create new rules to facilitate data sharing, new measures to enable the reuse of data, which is held by the public sector, so maybe held for one reason but could be used in other applications. And it will give the means for Europeans to have control on the use of the data that they generate by making it easier and safer for companies and individuals to voluntarily make available data for the wider common good. So I'll leave it there, and hope we still have some time for some questions. Thank you very much, Stefan.
Thank you, William. Yes, indeed, we can then, of course, discuss further during the following discussion with participants. And you also mentioned that there will be upcoming council conclusions that can also, with some suggestions for the Commission. And what we know is, of course, that there is this ongoing work as part of the current German Council presidency, where digitalization and green transition and aligning these two agendas is very high up on the agenda. And that I'm happy that we have actually that we have a speaker from Nicolas Schäfstoß, and a policy advisor from the EU coordination unit in the German Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Protection, with us today to actually discuss also what is currently on the agenda when it comes to the German government, and also the ongoing work on the German presidency. Because, as mentioned by William, there is really a lot of possibilities, namely with digitalization And traceability of products is at the core of the current discussions on how to actually make different stages of the life cycle more circular, whether we want to repair a product, remanufacture it, or also send information back to the producer, or also manage end of life phase in a better way. Sharing information, addressing them is definitely one of the challenges, but there are many others. And so Nicolas, happy to hear how do you see what policies can do to support digitalization and innovative solutions for a circular economy at the EU level, but also what is currently going on when it comes to policy developments in Germany itself. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefan, also for inviting me. It's a pleasure to have the chance to speak to you on this important topic today. I think even though COVID and the recovery concerns us most these days, the whole transformation to climate neutrality by 2050 and stopping biodiversity loss, still they remain the great challenges of our time. And of course, the transition to a circular economy plays a very decisive role in achieving the goals of the Green Deal. The German Environment Ministry has made, as you said, the topic of digitalization for the environment a priority during the German EU presidency. And we have chosen to put this topic on the agenda for two reasons. On the one hand side, as you all know, we see a great potential in digital technologies to help us protect climate, nature, and resources, and to move forward towards greater circularity, be it in mobility sector, in agriculture, or the energy sector. The possibilities are nearly endless. On the other hand, it is really necessary to better take into account sustainability considerations when developing and using such digital technologies. This is because digital solutions, they can increase, of course, efficiency by a reduced input of resources, time, and capital. However, this can also result in quite harmful developments when these gains we have from digital, when they are reinvested only in additional production and in additional consumption. So digital business models themselves often even create the conditions for such rebound effects, which we do not want to see. So we need the right policy framework to minimize negative effects and to maximize the positive impacts. And in Germany, our minister and the ministry, we decided in 2018 to incentivize the whole debate on digitalization and sustainability, because we realized that both communities are not connected. They speak kind of a different language. And at the same time, we knew that we cannot deal or stop dealing with this megatrend of digitalization when we want to shape environmental policies. As the Commission stated absolutely rightly, it is a twin transition and we have to consider both megatrends. So what we did was establishing firstly a national digital policy agenda for the environment, which was presented this year and which was, I think, at least one of the first kinds of such a strategy in the European Union. But we said from the very beginning that we also have to lift the topic on the EU level. And this is because many relevant policy measures can only be implemented EU-wide, as we need a certain market power to apply standards in international competition, for example. And we also believe strongly that a sustainable digitalization can become a guiding principle and a competitive advantage for Europe in the global competition. So as a presidency, we set the course with two sets of council conclusions. First, on the Commission's Circular Economy Action Plan, and secondly, specifically on digitalization for the benefit of the environment. And what is it that we want to achieve with these conclusions? I think there are three main pillars. First, we need to make the ICT sector itself greener as a prerequisite. Second, we need to foster digital innovation. And the third pillar is to strengthen investments and research for circular digital solutions. When it comes to the greening of the ICT sector, I would like to state the following. Beside all promising opportunities, we have to work on the greening of the sector, because data processing, digital infrastructures, and devices, they all increasingly consume valuable raw materials and energy during development, manufacturing, and of course the use phase. And as you already said, too few devices and components stay in the loop, leading to ever more e-waste, for example. So we want to counter that with measures during the whole life cycle of the product, starting with updated eco-design requirements to increase reusability, durability, repairability, and to uptake the use of secondary raw materials. Another focus that we have in the Council conclusions is the climate impact of data centers. And we support the goal of the Commission to make data centers carbon neutral by 2030. But to achieve this, we have to help in particular small and medium-sized operators of data centers to cope with this challenge, also financially. And what we want to do is to stimulate the demand for eco-friendly ICT in public procurement by incentivizing member states to integrate eco-criteria for data centers or cloud services in their national procurement policies. So the second pillar is about leveraging digital solutions to enhance circularity. We know that digital solutions can accelerate the transition to a circular economy in all major sectors by decoupling growth from resource use. And in particular, we also believe, as William already carried out, that tracking and tracing can help us to establish digital product passports to better inform supply chain actors. I don't want to repeat everything that William stated already, but also we as a German ministry and as a presidency, and I think all member states agree that such product passports would allow us to reuse and recycle more products than we do today, and also to take better informed purchasing decisions. So these product passports may be the entry point for a real circular economy as we envision it. And that's what we also strongly support the Commission to bring forward a proposal on such products for all passports for all key value chains as they are mentioned in the Circular Economy Action Plan. William already mentioned that we of course need high quality data for all of that. And he also mentioned that we have to cope with the public interest on the one hand side, and of course the interest of private actors on the other side. And I think we have to ensure the primacy of public interest, including a high level of protection of the environment, whilst also, of course, protecting business and trade secrets. And I think this will be a very important discussion, but we have to lead this discussion in the future. Furthermore, I think that also the use of AI and also other key digital technologies can significantly contribute to circularity. In Germany, for example, we launched a 50 million AI funding program, which is a huge success, attracting startups, SMEs, and academia from all sectors. And I think we'll have to facilitate exchange on such best practice. And of course, we have to ensure that high social and ecological standards become a principle of the EU's approach to AI and other key enabling technologies. And the last pillar I mentioned is about investments and research for green digital solutions. We really strongly welcome that the recovery facility and the multi-annual financial framework focus on sustainability and resilient recovery while supporting green and digital priorities. As you might know, 28% of the funds under the RRF shall be made available for the digital transition, inter alia, to reach the objectives of the Green Deal. And also with a view to international competition, we strongly believe that Europe needs to increase its capacities to deploy adequate financing for key digital technologies in order to foster sustainable growth, competitiveness, and prosperity. And this is why we will have to leverage synergies between the digital and the green transition in EU funding programs, as well as in the national recovery plans now through public and private investments that contribute to the Green Deal. And lastly, besides funding, there is really a strong need to integrate the interplay of sustainability and digitalization in academic and practical research. There is still a lack of comprehensive information that we urgently need. And this should also be reflected in the new Horizon Europe framework program, for example. So this was a glimpse on what environment ministers will discuss about in the Environment Council meeting on December 17th. We are on a good way to reach agreement thanks to the broad support of all the member states. And in addition, we also have agreed already with our trio partners from Portugal and Slovenia that they will carry on the work in the Council. And I'm very glad that also the Commission has put a strong focus on that whole topic. And I really want to emphasize that they have been a strong supporter of our work during the past months. In this regard, also, I want to thank William, who is with us today and who has provided a lot of expertise and input. This also applies to the EPC that was carrying out a preparatory study upon request of our ministry before the presidency. And also your recommendations were a highly important contribution to our ongoing work. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Nicolas, for this very insightful remarks. And indeed, happy always to see this kind of happy stories of this kind of very rich work on aligning the two agendas across different institutions and between different stakeholders. So thank you for these insights. And just to inform everyone that Sirpa Pietikäinen will unfortunately have to leave us because, as mentioned, it's a very busy period this week. Is the Strasbourg week. So Sirpa, in case you have a minute at least, I'd be happy to hear any closing remarks from your side before we then continue forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just would like to wish you all the best success. I'm very different speakers go. And I think that we know that the digitalization is part of the challenge and it's a part of the solution. And I think that the product passports and the modularity of goods is going to be on the crux of the innovation and the work in the future. So just stay in touch and all the best success for all the actors in this field. Thank you. And sorry, I just need to leave to have the intervention in the plenary.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And for having at least this amount of time to join us, it's given the very busy schedule you definitely that you have. Yes, so we had an opportunity to hear, let's say, the policymakers about their positions on the role of innovative solutions and notably digitalization in supporting circular economy. But I'm now happy to also introduce our last panelist for today, Mr. Tom Eng, Senior Vice President of Tomra. So a bit of, let's say, some practical experience from the industry and to hear what exactly is going on in the field and possibilities for improvements in the future. And of course, if you have any suggestions regarding the policies, we have been discussing a lot about digitalization, of course, because it's definitely at the core of all discussions when you talk about innovation and circular economy at this point. But of course, if there are any other examples you can share or insights on innovative solutions for a circular economy, that is, of course, helpful, of course, building on a very interesting video we could see in the very beginning. So, Tom, the floor is yours. Happy to hear your reflections.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you for the invitation to this webinar. Let me share a presentation with you guys. I think you can see it. So, innovative solution for circular economy. If we look a little bit at, if I can get my screen to work, yes. So this is the problem we are up against. This is the number from 2016. The world produced some 2 billion tons of municipal waste, equivalent to 10,000 Empire State Buildings. So you can see the problem is absolutely enormous. And what we see is that, of course, when you look at the waste hierarchy, and Sirpa talked about reduce and reuse, definitely that's something we support. But we also see that there is some problems to get that. So we think there is a need to also look at the recycling part, and that is Why do I mention that? Well, I think that looking at the waste that is created, we need to look at also the recycling part of it. And this is where we come in. Because we have some problems with my computer. There we go. So Tomra, who is Tomra? Well, we are a company based in Norway. We started off in the reverse vending machines. So those of you living in countries where you have deposit either on bottles or cans, or maybe also in the future other objects, you probably have that hole in the wall where you get the money back. And in that market, Tomra is one of the main players and has been that for 50 years. The other part of Tomra is on the sorting solutions, where we make sensors and scanners for different industries. If we start with the food, so this is not food as food waste, but this is food coming from the fields, from the trees. The whole idea is to make sure that you get the highest purity on that food fraction, but also that you lose as little as possible to save as much as possible of the resources as you can. Typical examples can be blueberries, nuts, tomatoes, kiwis, so quite a wide range. The mining part, probably the most known examples is when we sort diamonds. So all the known big diamonds found these days are found by our scanners at our customers. The biggest one I've heard of was 1,700 carat, so quite a big one, and probably something everybody else would like to have under the Christmas tree this year. And then finally, recycling, which I'm heading up, where we sort waste out of in the sorting plant. As you saw in the video that was presented by the minister, those orange boxes are our boxes to sort out plastic, metal, wood, paper, and so on. We are about 4,000 employees, not a very big company, but a global company. And we had revenues of just short of 10 billion Norwegian kroners, or some 900 million euro. Now, what we have since approximately 2 years, we established a separate circular economy division, where we took some of the best people from various divisions and really looking at a more holistic view, because we think we have a good position to really help out here. And there's a lot of things happening these days. If you look at the new framework and new opportunities, quality of the sorted material, extremely important. Why is that happening? Well, because we have new types of customers. We have the plastic producers, the chemical companies. We have incinerators that are looking at sorting out some of the valuable and some of the recyclable material before it goes to incinerators. In incinerating, and you have the converters and the brand owners with recycling content. We see that, we see that emerging markets is growing because the awareness also in this part of the world is really looking at how we can recycle. We see that the customers are looking at a much more holistic offering, so not only a product and a service, but also looking at how can we use the data, and I will get a little bit back to that. We see that there's a pull from the end users and the integrators because they need to react to some of those other customers above. And we see not the least legislation. I think legislation is so important, and I think I'm here talking to open doors because that is the only way we can get some of this really going and really make the next step in this circular economy strive. We have a commitment within Tomra. Is that by 2030, 40% of post-consumer plastic packaging should be collected. The number today is somewhere around 14 to 15%. And at the same time that 3/4 of that collected material will be closed loop recycling. Today, we probably talk 5% or less. So that's of course a giant leap to get to that number. And definitely that's not something we can do by ourselves. We need to look at how the entire value chain, which you all are aware of, how we can work together. And in my 22 years now in this industry, I have never seen so much activity from the different players within the value chain, how everybody are working together to look at different solutions. One of the things that is very much demanded is the data. What can we do with that? So this is very much into the digital solution. How can we use the data to track material, look at trends, and so on? And one of the products that we have launched is a Tomra Insight. So that's the kind of collecting the data. Of course, you can have it from a unit, you can have it in a plant, or you can even have it as a waste management company that you collect different data from different plants and do some benchmarking. But imagine if you could connect all the 7,000 units that we have installed, or even all sensor-based units that are installed, or even all equipment in a sorting plant and at the recyclers. Then we really start talking about fact-based decisions and really looking at how we can track different material, and thus also looking at the circular economy. Again, how the whole picture has changed. This is an example from Rotevat, the plant you looked at in the beginning video. An example of how the waste management company, the Green Dot system, and brand owners looked at design of the product. And this was the result, a new ketchup bottle where they saved 260 tons of plastic. And you can say 260 tons, it's not a big number. But rest assured, there are literally thousands of those opportunities out there. And that is really when you can start looking at what can be saved and also used in a circular economy solution. AI has also been mentioned, and some of the technologies you can use to detect material and colors. But if you take this object here to the left, that one silicon cartridge, that one is made of PE, but it has silicon inside, which is deadly for the process of the recyclability. So you need to be able to look at how can you use different means than just a standard technology to take that product out of the material stream. And that is what we're doing now with the AI. And so we're looking at this nipple, in this case, of that silicon cartridge, and then we can take it out. So one example of many how we can use AI. And then I just would like to, my second last slide, would like just to point out we have, within the Circular Economy division, established a white paper called Resource Recovery Playbook, where we have talked with players in the market and said, what would the world look like in 2030, both in developing markets and developed markets? So please have a look at the resociety.net to have to download that report. And my closing remarks, how do we get to the sustainable future? Well, it's about how do you collect the material. A lot of it's not collected. 2 billion people really don't have a waste management system in place in the world, which is going to increase to more than 3 billion if we don't do anything, and we need to do something. It's about product design. How do we make sure that the product design is really supporting a more circular economy? We need to get a quality so that the brands understand that they can use a recycled content instead of virgin. We need to look at different sources of the material. So incineration, MSWs, maybe even landfills you need to look at. And finally, there are different things that you can do on new technologies to be able to get to those qualities. That's what I had. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to you, Tom. Indeed, very interesting examples of innovating solutions which are already scaled up and used by you, and indeed building upon also what we saw in the video on central waste sorting, using data. Data actually also is something that is always interesting, and indeed it's something that is a fuel of the modern new economy, digital economy, as William also mentioned. And but of course it can further be scaled up also thanks to, with the help of different policy tools that are at disposal to the policymakers. So so now we basically can I can open the floor, let's say virtual floor, to the audience, and I'm happy that we already received a number of questions. Now, of course, we are racing against time a bit, so I will try to pick on the questions and try to address them, as many of them as possible. And so I see, let's say, at least 2 questions that are specifically relevant for William. So one is from Marcus Navin Jones. So as more and more chemicals are banned, how do we stop products containing those chemicals from becoming waste? That's one question. And another, on a separate line, again, going back to digital more specifically, from an anonymous attendee this time. Is the digital product passport also planned for reusable products? So is it planned for reusable products to see whether they are in their specific system boundaries environmentally preferable? So despite their reusability, still to be able to check, I would understand this, their environmental impacts compared to especially other potential products. If you have any insights you can share, and of course anything on top of what you already heard and wanted to add on top of your previous intervention, now is the time for it.
Right, thank you, Stefan. Well, I'll try and answer a little bit those 2 questions. On chemicals, I mean, legacy chemicals that we have to deal with, I mean, of course, if we are more strict with our bans on certain substances through REACH, we still have to deal with those chemicals that are already in the economy. As I talked about, you know, the flow of materials going through the economy, the ones that are coming back, we have to deal with, and also they're going to last longer in our economy. How do we get them out? Well, I think that you can see some indications of the direction we're going in our chemical strategy for sustainability, which we published, which we adopted in October, where we aim at a toxic-free environment. We aim at having sort of safe and sustainable by design products, and we aim at encouraging non-toxic cycles and decontamination. And there are many ways to do this. I think the most important, of course, is design. And I think here things like eco-design and so on, or essential requirements, are very important in saying what should be allowed in products or not, and other incentives such as EPR, extended producer responsibility. Of course, we have REACH. We have the possibility to ban things in REACH. We're looking mainly at banning the most hazardous substances, of course, and looking also in the future at new hazard classes, in things like endocrine disruptors and so on, which really need to be looked at, and persistent or organic pollutants and so on. But we're also, and of course, we're looking at reforming the REACH procedures, but we're also looking at other technological approaches such as tracking and tracing, and a common open data platform for chemicals. So we are looking at many ways in which we can address those contaminants and difficult substances once they're in the system. And of course, there is the developing technology of chemical recycling, which still isn't really there in terms of overall life cycle impact, because it's still very energy intensive. But pilots work technologically, and so I mean there is some potential in chemical recycling in certain cases for the future. On the application of the digital product passport for reuse, I mean, yes, this is absolutely something which we should be looking at. I take the example of electric vehicle batteries. I mean, one of the reasons actually that the private sector is already developing product passports is, at a certain point in the life of an electric vehicle battery, it's not really efficient enough yet still to power an electric vehicle, but it still has a huge amount of power and can be used for energy storage. Now, if you have a means of keeping dynamic data attached to the specific electric vehicle battery, you can, on the basis of algorithms, on the basis of dynamic data that's coming from that battery, assess its performance and know what is just the right moment in terms of efficient use for that battery to go from being in a vehicle to being used for energy storage. And you can also help the market work by fixing a price for that to happen at that point, at that transaction point, when the battery is transferred from the vehicle owner or the car producer to the energy infrastructure. So all of these kinds of reuse possibilities should, I hope, be enabled and made much more possible. Of course, then we have the possibility of sharing and also second-hand sales and so on. I think that the more information that you have on a product, the more data about its repairability and so on, the more you will promote reuse, repair, and remanufacture. So very much looking at enabling all of those stages, all of those value retention possibilities and business models.
Thank you, William. And we also received one more question that is specifically for the work of the Commission. And since maybe we may not be have a chance later, just to ask you. So it's from Mira Taya, and the question is basically is there any upcoming strategy specifically on product as a service being prepared, or any kind of specific policy initiative that the Commission working on, of course, building upon the already ongoing work on the circular economy agenda. William, is there anything that you could share at this point on this?
On products as a service, I think most of what we're doing is in the realm of studies and so on, and we're certainly looking at it, but I don't think that we have any particular means to promote particular business models. Hopefully that we would like to think the market works in the right ways, and a lot of the initiatives that we are suggesting will help enable product as a service models, but I don't think that we're looking at any specific promotion of a particular business model.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, William. And let's see when it comes to other questions. So Tom, I actually also have, let's say, two questions that could be interesting for you. One is, I mean, of course, generally can be addressed by anyone, but let's see, maybe something for you, because what's going on in practice could be relevant in this regard. And of course, we are experiencing a major crisis, COVID-19, and we saw how very rapidly a new word, I mean, not a new, but relatively important new word, resilience, became quite prominent. So not only that we need to have make our economy more sustainable and competitive, but also resilient. And the question for you would be, given the crisis, what's going on, and potentially new challenges that lie ahead, and any potential similar crisis may occur, how do you see the role of innovative solutions, and maybe also generally, how do you see this kind of crisis like COVID impacting the future of, let's say, the kind of circular economy and your business in this regard, and how innovative solutions can also make circular economy more resilient? That's one. That is one question that came namely from Mahesh Shahi. And there is another one, which is not specifically only for you, but it's interesting to see from practice on fiscal incentives. A question coming from Max Ostermeyer. So what is the role of fiscal policy incentives to help the transition, for example, taxing primary resource use, and basically to, in a way, make secondary materials more competitive compared to virgin material, in a nutshell? From your perspective, how does that really work? What are the prospects of this kind of fiscal policies supporting also your work and making secondary materials more competitive on the market? So yeah, these two questions, if you can answer, would be helpful.
Certainly. Thank you, Stefan. Well, I'll start with the last one. Fiscal incentives. I definitely think that is something that is needed, and it works, especially I think in the circular economy, because as I think as William mentioned, some of these solutions are in the beginning, of course, quite costly. It's not something that would make it maybe to the board level because of the return on investment if you look at some of these investments. But looking at, for example, what the chemical companies now are doing, they are seeing that we need to go from just producing a virgin oil-based product to go to recycled content. I think that having that carrot and stick mentality that we see is definitely going to kind of give a faster start to the circular economy movement, if you want. Yes, this plastic tax is one good example that it will definitely help on that. So we do support it. So I think it's a kind of, it needs to be a combination between the market and some legislation and some policies behind it. The second question was more on the COVID impact. Well, I think short term, we have seen that the waste generation has gone up because people are consuming more at home when you can't go out in the restaurants. So that has had an impact. On the other hand, you see some material prices going down, especially in the metal market, because consumption of cars and construction is going down. So also there are less material. But I think in general, having a situation like COVID, it forces everybody, we as consumer, as companies, as policymakers, to rethink everything. This is something that we never experienced before, and I think it's for whatever it's worth. I mean, it's of course a bad situation, but it definitely forces people to think differently. And as a kind of question to the innovation part, yes. And in these days, probably more important than ever that you're able to innovate and really think out of the box and make new things. But again, looking at the whole value chain, I think is very important. That is also something which I think is the result of this, that people are talking much more together, like we are today.
Thank you. Very insightful. Lastly, I would have a question for Nicolas when it comes to your work under the German presidency. I would say that this was a very relevant also event. I mean, meaning the crisis in COVID-19, and that actually had really make a quite of a disruption and disturbance on what was being envisaged, and now it just changed the rules of the game to some extent. But would be happy to hear how the German presidency is coping with it, and how did it change some of your approach to the innovation and circular economy, green and digital transitions, and basically how do you think this will affect the work also after the German presidency? Of course, any additional reflections you may have on the previous questions, or something that you wanted to add on top of your previous remarks would be helpful. Something that, for example, I would like to ask if you have anything to say further on the investments, on the need to invest at the EU level, but also if there is anything that is comparable, like in Germany, like good practice when it comes to investing in research and development, but also in scalable solutions when it comes to innovation and circular economy. Of course, as much as there is something that is already in ongoing development, would be helpful to share with the audience.
Yeah, of course, COVID changed in a way everything. It was much more kind of a shock for the Croatian presidency was before our presidency, because COVID hit them right in the middle of their presidency. So we could at least adopt in a way and of course try out some solutions that we would need now for the presidency, which are simply digital solutions. If we cannot meet in person, then of course you have to switch on digital solutions, as we do here today. And I think switching to such digital solutions showed us two things. I think COVID showed that things that were not imaginable before are now something self-evident. We saw that we can cope with big challenges, and this also applies to climate change. For example, for tackling climate change, we can adapt to such situations, and we can use digital also to save resources. I mean, meeting in a video conference, a meeting does save material. This is a simple fact. Of course, we want to meet in person again, and I think there is a need to meet in person, of course, especially when it comes to very complicated negotiations on international level, for example. But of course, we can have such a webinar in the future, and we will have it. This will last in the future. I'm sure about that, and we can save travel costs, expenditures, and of course, greenhouse gas emissions on that. So this is a very simple learning, a lesson learned from the COVID time that we will hopefully carry on into the future. But at the same time, we will need to have a much stronger and digital infrastructures, because what we have also seen that many of us are struggling with not available high capacity networks, for example, and we will need to expand our digital infrastructure within very short time. This applies to high capacity broadband networks, but also to high capacity mobile networks, of course. And this is a huge challenge, which is also connected with huge investments that we have to take within the next few years only. And this leads me to your second question, of course, because you were asking, I think, for investment and funding and so on. First of all, I can speak from a German perspective now. When we had to set up our national recovery plans, which are of course highly dependent now on the recovery and resilience facility that we hopefully will agree on very soon among member states, we try to take it really seriously what was advised to us. So using that money to align the two transitions. This starts with, for example, the rollout of sustainable ICT infrastructures, which are really, I just mentioned it, huge investments that are needed. This is just one example that could be applied in national recovery plans, of course. But still, at the same time, I think that especially environment ministries, they have to take up the whole discussion on key enabling technologies from the digital side. They will have to deal with how can we use blockchain technology, how can we use AI, and also on that base, on the new knowledge that we all have now, establish really focused and targeted funding to use that technologies for the benefit of the environment, to tackle climate change and to reach the objectives of the Green Deal. So this is something that all member states should really concentrate on within the next years. And as I said before, and this is also maybe a call to the Commission, we should really in the near future facilitate the exchange on best practices from member states, because there are such best practices. But as we have seen in the discussion during the last months, those best practices are not, member states are not aware always on what is already going on, and we should facilitate that exchange. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicolas. William, if I understood well, you have a final remark to make?
I know that you're nearly the end, but I could be very brief just to pick up on two things there. First is that we're now receiving the draft recovery and resilience plans from member states and reading through them and giving initial reactions. It's a lot easier for them to find ways to spend money on the digital stuff than it is on the circular stuff. And even the member states that have circular economy strategies and so on, it's very difficult for an official to start from scratch in a short period of time to really work out how you could build an investment program for circularity. And so that's a struggle, apart from, of course, waste management and so on, where the big infrastructure investments and so on. So I really think that's important. And I think on the member state to member state exchanges, that's extremely important. We have the TAIEX peer-to-peer program, which is aimed at supporting such exchanges, organizing and financing exchanges between officials and with other experts in member states to help get this rolling. So I think that's a real need that we need to a gap that we need to plug there using that instrument. So I really would support that we do that. I think it's probably a little bit too late for the the recovery plans, but going forward, I think we need to try and build up that capacity in the member states.
Thank you, William. Well, indeed, the crisis has really made a huge disturbance, and with something completely unexpected. But it's good that we are trying, I mean, to tackle it, and then of course to plan ahead and to integrate it in our further considerations, and of course interinstitutional work and building upon also what's going on in the private sector industry is very important to overcome the crisis, but also to make our economy more circular, resilient, and competitive in a nutshell. But in any case, it's apparent that this year was not really bright. But I mean, listening to the discussion we had, I mean, there is an optimistic note as to what what lies ahead in terms of policies and ongoing practices, and that they can be also scaled up. And indeed, the work continues regardless of this crisis in making our economy more circular. That can also contribute to climate neutrality, resource efficiency, and as mentioned already, competitiveness, resilience. So I would like to thank the panel speakers once again for joining this discussion, providing very valuable, very useful insights. And of course, to thank the participants for their very active involvement, very interesting questions that I believe we managed to address all of them, or at least a great majority. And indeed, we will continue, the EPC will continue working on this topic and organizing discussions on circular economy, as well as innovation, digitalization, and green transition. And happy to have you also join our further discussions. Have a nice day, and looking forward to seeing you, discussing with you soon. Goodbye.